Oh, that's good. I keep having this nagging feeling that I've forgotten something.
Hey, if you forgot it, it probably wasn't all that important.
Yeah, I guess.
If this video comes across as kind of rushed, that's because it 100% is, but I didn't want to leave this on this note. I've been talking a lot about video games, healthy aspects, unhealthy aspects, how it's affected my life, but I kind of just breezed over, like, the fundamental building block that this entire channel and community was forged from. The only time I really even mentioned it was describing it as an escape from the escapism. Which, you know, that's not exactly the most positive descriptions. So I'm making one more before summer classes starts, because that's not true. Admittedly, making video game concepts has not been a good part of how I've been able to build up my life, because I might argue it's been the best. So in this video talking about video game concept creation, I'm going to start by not talking about it at all. I'm going to talk about what it's like being in STEM. Science, technology, engineering, math. I'm going into physics, it's what I'm studying. The way the modern education system is set up is that it's just hard to get into these sorts of fields. A lot of things have to line up right, or you gotta bulldoze through a lot of difficult obstacles. And because of those accessibility issues, the kinds of people that really succeed in STEM tend to have a lot of the same qualities, a lot of the same personality traits, tend to value a lot of the same things, and they excel because of that. It's a system that's largely designed to let them excel. Like, we all know the stereotype of a prodigy, right? But because of that, something very interesting happens. If you have a system that wildly favors a single type of person, a problem arises, which is being actively addressed in the communities, where you're training up a lot of similar people to approach problems in similar ways, who then move into the industry offering very similar skills. Then you try to get a job in the industry, and it can be difficult because there's so many other applicants like you. You know what? Quick tangent. This is why diversity is so important. A lot of people miss the forest from the trees by only focusing on, like, ethnicities and sexualities and disabilities, which, like, sure, there's a moral reason to support that, but, like, morality doesn't fuel change on its own. Where that real value comes from is different experiences. Yes, a science lab should be accessible to a disabled person because that's just the right thing to do. But it's also useful to be accessible to a disabled person, because a disabled person naturally has had to work around something their entire life. They are going to be able to approach research problems from different directions than somebody who has not dealt with that. The point of all this is that it is very valuable to be able to take life experiences and skills that are rare in certain fields into those fields. And I've been very loosey-goosey about my views in these videos. There's been a lot of I'm exploring thought processes instead of planting flags. Nah, dude, I'm ready to die on the hill for this flag. I think that making video game concepts, like we've been doing in Peasant's Perspective, Roundtable Relay, and my own videos, is extremely useful. Because the simple act of doing so is practicing so many useful skills simultaneously. You're learning how to translate murky ideas into something structured on paper. You're learning how to communicate them to other people, make them accessible to their viewpoints. You are practicing what I might argue is one of the most useful skills to have just in general of outside of the box thinking. What else could this be? This shit is incredibly good for our brains. I just think, and this is the only point in this video I'm going to get a little negative, is that it can be a bit challenging to start growing from this point. A quick reminder, I'm mainly speaking through personal experience in these sorts of videos. I'm not trying to, like, give you advice of what you should do. I'm coming at this more from just what I noticed what wasn't working and what did work for me. Saying this because I might slip up while I'm talking. I actually feel pretty empowered and passionate about this, and it could start slipping into, like, motivational video territory. It's not intentional. I'd like to begin with a shitty juice metaphor. Everybody everybody's heard the term creative juices. This conceptual idea of something that starts flowing when we're feeling inspired. But I'd like to take the term a bit deeper. I'm still kind of working on this metaphor, but I think that everybody harvests and consumes creative juices in different ways. Some people use less, some people use more, some people grow their own fruits while others go to the store to find it. No avenue is bad so long as you understand how it works for you. And I didn't. I'm the kind of person that will see, like, a fruit tree and just immediately harvest, squish down, and guzzle everything. I am a glutton for creative juice. And that can cause problems when you're trying to use a creative outlet like making videos. I said in the last video that I considered a lot of my time playing video games on social media as wasted. That's quite literal. Across the many years that I've been making videos, there is a very, very, very poor relationship between how big the gaps were in my upload schedule and how much time I was actually working on videos. Like, I'm a pretty efficient worker when I can get down to things. But my problem was that my life was pretty centered around video games. It was where I was harvesting the creative juice from. But I was trying to consume way more than what I was getting out of it. I wasn't being very conservationally minded. I'd strip a whole tree bare, keep coming back to the tree hoping to get a little bit more inspiration, but like it takes time for plants to grow. And I would just get stuck. Which is such a damn shame, because looking back, when I was firing on all cylinders, my god, I was the best. Arrogant as fuck to say, but like, if only because I was the only one stupid enough to put that much time and that much effort into videos, I'll make the claim I had the best moveset content. But when I had all the ingredients I needed, I could cook. But that's the problem. Especially with such a hyper focus on Smash Brothers, I was trying to find new ways to cook things. I was never satisfied with a specific structure, but there's only so many ways you can make a drink if you're using the same ingredients. So let's pose a theory. I believe there are different flavors of creative juices that inherently come from different things. Now, gaming's pretty good at presenting a wide variety of flavors. They do use a lot of the same ingredients, but like we talked about last time, so many stories, so many genres, challenging players in different ways, it's easy to feel pretty fulfilled solely through gaming. I feel this especially strongly looking back at the Dark Matter and the Age of Mythology videos. When I was making those videos, it definitely felt like I had a much stronger fuel behind them, and I think they're both pretty good because of that. Age of Mythology was based on a game I hadn't really talked about before, along with an interest outside of video games that was fueling into it. And Dark Matter may have been a Smash Brothers video, but it was heavily tied to one of my favorite games from my childhood. And really, that was just a video about trying to recreate Abathur in Smash Brothers. Like, I've enjoyed most of the videos I've made, but I also think to things like the new Ridley video, that thing's over an hour long, and I can't remember much about it, apart from the idea of having Ridley, like, molten his tail like a Glavenus from Monster Hunter, because that came from a Monster Hunter juice, and I hadn't used that in a very long time. But unfortunately, on a fundamental level, gaming alone just couldn't sustain me. Some people can balance that, so they can grow a whole orchard of video game trees and harvest various parts of it at sustainable rates. Not me, I got no self-control. And looking back, I realize that all of those creative ruts were a need for something more. I needed more juice. And that juice could not be found through gaming. So I needed to find another source. And finding that first source was really fucking hard. It was pure chance. I didn't want to do it, I just needed to pay the bills, and my father worked at a steelyard. So, path of least resistance. It was really just hard for a couple of weeks, but then something started to click. There's a ton of things in those sorts of, like, trades jobs that actually tickle a lot of the same parts of my brain that video games do. I found this picture of hanging steel from a cart. As fucking hard as that can be to do, that shit is heavy, there's also something extremely satisfying about trying to get as much as you can on a single card so you can get more efficiently productive. I got bonuses based on how well I was doing that. I talked about the Mario Party minigame of welding. There's a lot of satisfying things about kind of looking at your workspace and being like, you know, if I just welded together some scrap metal, I could make some rudimentary bases that I could put rails on top of, and then I wouldn't have to bend over as much. And that's really fucking satisfying. And there were so many different moments where I will credit the kind of normalization in my brain of that sort of out-of-the-box thinking that just helped me tremendously. I was an efficient worker. I approached problems from different directions. And there wasn't really much that was providing, like, creative juice from that environment, but there were ingredients, and it was a different environment. Now that one connection was made, others could follow. Because as I started getting into a groove of things, I started realizing that there were secondary things I could do while working. It's the kind of environment that so long as you get the job done, it doesn't matter what you're doing, so pop in some headphones and listen to music. My music taste started to branch out. I got really into, like, Scandinavian and Mongolian metal, because it feels really, really cool to be welding while listening to that. Over time, I wanted to branch out further, so I started listening to history podcasts, which were quite cozy and made the workdays go by really, really fast. The Steelyard wasn't providing new juices, but this shit was. And here's the great part. This is what I really love looking back. Because this sort of stuff was a feedback loop. The starting point for those sorts of things was video games. Why did I start listening to The Who? Because they did the intro song for Jedi Fallen Order, and it was badass. Lots of pieces of media got me interested in history, but because of the kind of all-encompassing nature of gaming, it was hard for me to... I had a hard time growing out of that bubble. But here, in a new bubble, I'd found an environment where it could really start to flourish. And it's a recent development that very well might run into a brick wall once school classes really start getting crazy, but it's starting to feed back into the concepts I create. The Age of Mythology video is a perfect example of that. And as these new juice sources started to really flourish, the creative rut started to fade. The motivation wasn't really there yet, because I was still trying to pull from a gaming, core, but the gaps weren't as empty, and it kept going. The Steelyard gave me some pretty good discipline skills. I started questioning if I could go back to school. I did. I've been crushing it, and I got a job as a science writer. And here, over all others, I can with pinpoint precision thank my work making video game design concepts. 'Cause it's just the same stuff. I'm just writing about science instead. And now that I've hit that stage, the connections just keep coming. Every new person I talk to brings in another one. Maybe it's a different field, maybe it's something they bring from outside of their field to understand their field. Do you see what I'm getting at? Having good sources of creative juices and possessing the skills to think outside of the box and explain your ideas genuinely brings you extreme success in so many different ways. And at this point in my life, there really aren't any creative ruts anymore. I got too many flavors to choose from, too many ingredients. It doesn't matter that I'm a glutton anymore, because I found an all-you-can-eat buffet. And I do heavily credit the sorts of skills I built up through making video game concepts. Here's a really fun example. There was a history class at my school that was unlike any other history class I've ever seen. Instead of slideshows and lectures, although that was a little part of it, instead, you were taking a point in history, assigning every student a historical figure that appeared at that point in history, and it's essentially a role-playing game where every single student has their own unique goals, and they're trying to debate with each other, forge alliances, make enemies, to ensure that their goals are satisfied. For example, one of the games was set during the Council of Nicaea, which was the Roman period under Constantine, where they essentially decided how Catholicism was structured. because there were a lot of fringe groups at that time, and they wanted to bring the whole religion under a single banner. Different students essentially took on the roles of advocates for various rules that they wanted implemented. This person wants priests to be able to have families, this one does not. And you just kind of fight over that over the course of a few weeks. It's the most fun I've ever had in education. But here's the thing. You're allowed to bring props for your characters, for your speeches. It's heavily encouraged. And I work at a steel yard. This is gonna mess with the whole setup. I have no idea if this is in frame or not. Ugh, it's like 30 pounds. Those are real ass chains. And let me tell you, being able to get in front of a room with a bunch of students and bang this into the floor and get the whole room to shut up. Ugh. Probably fucked up the setup of this. It's fine. And what were all the connections that led to that moment? Where were all the creative juices? An interest in history brought me to the class. The ability to make things at a steel yard. Fairly obvious. What got my brain used to thinking about weird stuff in my environment and how differently it could be, how I could use it. I genuinely credit it. It's obviously not a cause and effect, but getting so used to looking at a video game, looking at a character, and just wondering what else they could be, I feel pretty comfortable claiming that it was one of the major things that helped me build those skills. I'd like to end off with another shitty metaphor. This time we're going with chains. Where most hobbies can really only be single rungs that support you throughout life, video games can be a whole structural chain. If you hook that around something and hang your life from it, it can pretty easily support that. But because of how all-encompassing games are, how you can get so many different things from them, if something starts to structurally wear down that chain, stuff can collapse, because all the support is coming from that chain. But say you take that one rung, that history rung, the one that's connected to Age of Empires, and you kind of start building from that place. Wrap another chain around. Now there's two chains. This game introduced me to a music genre. This one got me interested in a social issue. It's possible to hit a point where there's so many intertwining chains helping to support your life that even if one fails, it doesn't matter. God, this is sounding so much like an inspirational video now. I'm so sorry. Those things are such a blight because you get the satisfaction of the realization of what they're talking about just from watching the video, and then you don't actually do anything because you've already felt the satisfaction. The point I'm trying to get across here is that as much as I believe that video games, the communities around them, can create a very hard shell that your life can get trapped in, for the same reason it's easy to get trapped there, because of how all-encompassing gaming is, once you can start growing out of it, it connects to fucking everything. And when you're participating in a part of the gaming community that's actively trying to brainstorm new ideas, think outside of the box, imagine better ways that things can be, I don't think I'm even being overdramatic in saying this. The world benefits from having people like that in it. That's really what I wanted to say. I've clearly got significantly different views on gaming and whatnot, but I wanted to make sure that people realize that what the community formed around is something that I still think is unbelievably precious. That is not going away. Because in terms of the skills that it reinforces, I believe it's a pure positive to anybody's life. That's all for this video. See you in the next one.